Hi, I'm Jenny Clegg and I'm directly elected on CND National Council and I'm a member of the International Advisory Group. I have a specialist interest in China and the Pacific region, and I'm going to be talking about China and the coronavirus crisis, looking at how the media has been representing China at this time, looking at how China itself tackled the epidemic, for example, as compared with the UK, and then at the end reflecting on the meaning of security. What do we think it involves to keep people secure now, given the terrible experiences we're going through? Well, it's hardly surprising that the media has focused a lot on China, since this is where this devastating crisis first appeared. But both mainstream and social media are feeding a blame China narrative, often spreading fake news or partial truths, which is creating hostility towards China and Chinese people, with an alarming rise in hate crime. Trump has set this off by insisting on talking about the China virus. We don't call AIDS the American virus, we don't call it Ebola, the African disease. It's easy to see that Trump is looking for a scapegoat to deflect attention from his own unbelievable incompetence. But he's racialising and politicising the agenda here in a very dangerous way, attempting to frame China as the new enemy. The blame China rhetoric is expanding in the media by the day. At first, the Wuhan lockdown was seen as a draconian act, an abuse of human rights typical of a communist dictatorship, as if Chinese people live in a kind of semi-gulag. China is now accused of lying about the numbers, withholding information from the start, as if the government is obsessed with its own power and image and doesn't care about people. And its medical assistance to other hard-hit countries is viewed as some kind of underhanded global takeover. Actually, we have a long history of yellow peril scares, going back to the first days of immigration around the 1860s. These have played on fears of China about to swamp the world. Chinese people have long been seen as slaves undercutting British labour. They're inveterate liars and not to be trusted. There was a very popular music hall song about the heathen Chinese who cheated at cards, which went, "For ways that are dark and tricks that are vain, the heathen Chinese is peculiar, not to be trusted." Then there was a series of Hollywood movies from the 1920s about Fu Manchu. And here's a poster from the 1940 film, The Drums of Fu Manchu. And you can see world dictatorship, cruel, treacherous, insidious Dr. Fu Manchu and his ruthless scheme to rule the world. And this was a country at the time barely emerging from semi-colonialism. So media stories resonate with these deep-rooted fears, conveying a subtle message that China is a danger to the world. China has to be kept at a distance, and there is a general lack of engagement with Chinese people and Chinese society. Now, China actually has done quite a remarkable job in containing the virus, with less than 5,000 deaths. Of course, that's 5,000 too many. But it's because the country took decisive public action, in contrast with Boris Johnson and his libertarian state-averse flirtation with herd immunity. Yes, China made mistakes at first, but let's not forget that it was the first country to face this virus, and we now know how difficult it is to detect and test. What the government did, though, was to follow rigorously standard public health procedures to test, trace and isolate. The lockdown really was a lockdown, no matter the damage to the economy in the short term. Public resources were mobilised. 30,000 doctors and nurses from around the country were sent to Wuhan. Even mild cases were hospitalised. There was none of this stay at home for 7 days and then ring 111. Enterprises switched production swiftly. The production of masks, for example, increased some 12-fold. And we shouldn't think of this as just a top-down response. Far from it. There were tens of thousands of volunteers in local areas ferrying supplies, picking up PPE, taking it to where it was most needed, delivering food and medicines. So this really was a joint effort with government and people pulling together. And remember, China is a developing country with an average income of a quarter of our own. And yes, China did warn the world as far back as December the 31st. The head of the Centre for Disease Control made a phone call to his counterpart in the United States and burst into tears when talking about the risk. 2 weeks later, when China published the genome sequence, this was the fastest rollout of its kind ever achieved. We know the WHO has praised China, as have many other scientists. Richard Horton of The Lancet has said that the world should be grateful to China for its warnings and containment efforts. So the UK had nearly 2 months to learn, but the government failed to take Chinese experience seriously. Before I move on, I want to just say something about whether China is lying about numbers. Well, think about it this way. You know, Western economists have for years and years criticised Chinese statistics, saying that China's growth could not continue. But was there mistrust of the numbers to be believed? No, because China has become the world's second largest economy. So as I've said, this kind of dehumanising of Chinese people and distancing of China that's been going on is very dangerous, softening us up for a new Cold War. For Trump and the US military, China is an existential threat, and the US military budget has risen accordingly. Here in Britain, a group of right-wing anti-China hawks in the Tory party are using the crisis to try and get Britain to break with China. They want an even closer relationship with the US, and they want to boost military spending further. They have this delusional vision of a global Britain fully equipped with missiles and aircraft carriers and fighter jets, standing shoulder to shoulder with US military forces in the Pacific and the South China Sea. So this brings us to the question of security. The idea of security is we have to defend the nation against outside threats from other dangerous nations, which is all about deterrence and the strength of military power. But how have nuclear weapons deterred this devastating virus? Coronavirus cannot be defeated by governments acting alone. We're learning now that our health relies in the end on everyone else. We have to get away from thinking about security just in national terms. And it's not just about priorities, although of course this is important. Less on the military, more on public health. But we have to completely rethink security. Deterrence is about keeping others at bay. But this is the opposite of what we so desperately need right now, which is international cooperation. Among scientists to develop a vaccine, among governments to limit the damage from the economic downturn, and international cooperation on climate change, which holds an even more devastating prospect for the future. We need dialogue. We need to break down suspicion and mistrust. Security is not about military dominance, but about cooperation and solidarity. A few days ago, a group of Chinese students who graduated from a university in the UK clubbed together to raise nearly £40,000 for 2 ventilators to send to the NHS. Do you think this is a sneaky way to gain influence? Was it for the sake of image? They just wanted to look good? Or do you think they have a sense of international solidarity? Do you think actually that they see it's in their own interest to rid the world now of the virus so it doesn't come back to them in China? To finish, I'll just say this. The enemy is not China, it's the virus. The weapons are not nuclear missiles, but international solidarity and cooperation. Security is a shared world interest.